Hey everybody, I'm Iovonix, and this is a case of Distrust. We've got a little recap here. Sam Shipman had told me Green's letter was a fake. He said he'd phone me at Southern Coffee when he got a chance to look into Green's past. My last goal was to chase Green's bootlegging. Green's Vancouver wine that I'd tried at the Tin Spoon had smelled strongly of spice, same as the wine that Frankie told me was only grown in Napa. I had to go back to Southern Coffee and ask Frankie about that wine. So, let's get the hell out of here. Thought about heading back down the street. Dark stairs to the street. Alright, Southern Coffee. Yes. Go here. As always, we have to talk to the driver. Started talking with the driver, who began speaking about his recent European vacation. Went to Normandy on a steamliner. Let's ask about the trip. Oh, the Olympic was grand. Excellent machine. Crossed the Atlantic in 5 days. Plenty of amenities in their new tourist cabins, too. Let's ask about Normandy. He pinched his nose between thumb and forefinger and shook his head from side to side. I can see why these immigrants keep flooding in. That entire old world stinks. You know they eat frogs and snails? No, the steamliner's where I want to be. Next time I'll just stay on the boat. Jeez. He still had the frown on his face as we pulled to my destination. Oh, sorry for ruining your day by reminding you of your vacation. Southern Coffee was Automatic Diner, of course. In we go. Alright, Frankie. Still behind the bar. Yes, we will need to figure out if Shipman left any messages, and also ask about the wine. What's eating you, kid? He asked. Let's ask about notes first. Ask about that wine. A bottle of unlabeled wine sat on the table when I sniffed it. Smelled of strong spice. Well, you like this, I told him. Remember that wine you offered me? Oh, my Zinfandel, you nearly finished? Where did you say that grape was from? It's from here, California, Napa or Sonoma. You sure? Yes, Malone. That's the only place these grapes grow nowadays. And not Canada, I asked. What are you swinging at, Malone? Tiny Paul had a bottle of wine that tasted the exact same, that identical spice. He said it was from Green's bootlegging source, from Vancouver. Malone, I'm telling you, he said, no wine anywhere else in the world has that spice. It ain't from Vancouver, and Green ain't getting it cheap. I nodded. Well, you just confirmed my hunch. Green's got no source. He must be swindling Tiny Paul and the entire fairy gang, and I bet he'll run away with the money. Frankie let out a long whistle in disbelief. Just then the phone rang. Frankie picked it up with, hello, right, then handed me the receiver saying, Shipman. Convenient. PC, he said, his excited voice crackling the speaker. Find anything on Green? I asked. Nothing, he said. I was puzzled. Then why'd you call? That's the idea. First got pinched for a brawl in the ferry building. That was in November 1920. Before that, no Connor Green anywhere around the bay. Strange, he continued. Has trouble staying out of a mess. Mixed up in something nearly every week, so only appearing a few years ago? That Oakland backstory is Swiss cheese. Very interesting. What are you thinking? Green's got a different past? I asked. Uh-huh, he said. Guess that he just got here in 1920 and never been straight about where he's from. Wait, I said, if Connor Green was a criminal in another town, easily some cop would recognize the name and send him back home. SFBD isn't that thick. Right, Shipman said. If it's the same name, could be his real identity disappeared in another town. Yep. I thought aloud. So he might have changed lives. Is there any way to confirm that? If Green fled, the local bulls would keep looking for him, but not if they thought he died. Get these cases sometimes, where mobsters fake a death to escape a burg. Use a mangled stiff to do it, someone unrecognizable. That way they get out of town without a chase. Got any mobster deaths in 1920? I asked. A ton. Too many to look through, but narrow the search for me. A town he might be from. I could check a specific city's archives. Maybe St. Louis. But then why? It's like, why would he go? He probably wouldn't go back to St. Louis if he'd, like, run away from there, so... anything in your notes that could, that tells us where he could be from? Okay, let's take a look. Oh, so we got our investigate Green's bootlegging goal crossed off. That's good. Now we just need to discover Green's past. Greenhouse. Yeah, the tickets to St. Louis are the only thing we found, like, in his house, which indicated statements. I guess we'll just go ahead and ask about the tickets to St. Louis. Apparently that was it, given the little tune that just played. I found some tickets to St. Louis in Green's apartment, I told him. The missus was ruffled when I picked them up. I stayed on the telephone while Shipman used another line to call his contact at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. I was nursing a glass of gin when he got back to me. Lucky break, PC. Seems there's one that fits the bill. He read aloud an article from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch dated October 8th, 1920. Gun battle at June's Diner. Gangster dead. Suspected bandit clubhouse scene of another shooting. A heated argument turned deadly Thursday as multiple shots rang inside June's Diner on 14th Street. Suspected hideout of Egan's Rats. A man was found dead at the scene, unidentified due to gunshot wounds to his face. Police suspect he is mobster Breg the Jester, who had hired a private eye to investigate threats in his life. Oh! Just like I'm doing now, because he's planning on faking his death and skipping town again, of course. So yeah, he sent that fucking alert to himself, and he's acting all like shifty about it, like to make people think he's paranoid that someone's gonna come and kill him. Last month, Chief of Police Brannon said investigating gangster-on-gangster deaths was a waste of time, and the discovery of the threats leads many to believe police won't look further into the case. Oh, that Connor Green. Hold on, I said. This Breg character had hired a private detective? Seems police are quick to forget a case if they've got a reason to think it's just gangster violence. This lines up with Green, I said. Gets better. Breg's first name? Connor. Oh, come on. Really? You're being that uncreative? I cursed loudly through the telephone. What a joker. Maybe no wonder he's called the Jester. I continued with my theory, and your story says this Breg was deeply indebted, so maybe Green's just waiting in San Francisco until he's got enough dough to skip town and go home. He have some bootlegging business? Shipman asked. Why would he leave that behind? No, I shook my head. His wine is complete bunk. It's local stuff, not any Canadian route he might be claiming. I didn't know why he'd pull a fast one until now. Returning Breg to St. Louis could be huge. Swing by the station, we'll iron it all out. I agreed and slammed the receiver on its pegs. Hell yeah! Cracking the case. Seemed I need to make my way back to the station. Thank you for your assistance, Frankie. Leave. Off we go. Oh! So, what's the news on Green? Frankie asked as I was headed up the stairs. Now it seemed like I had all the details. I summarized it for him. So, the total wrap. Green isn't really green at all. He's Breg, the Jester, a former member of Egan's Rats from St. Louis. He's Breg? Frankie was shocked. But he's been here a while, Malone. Sure, I said, but only since 1920. He couldn't pay off his debts in Missouri, so he faked his death and moved to San Francisco. He's been longing to go back, but he needs a way to settle his score before he can show his face again. Makes sense. Is that where his bootlegging comes from? Frankie asked. Uh-huh, Green set up a sham rum running scheme. He bought local wine, but claimed to get it at lower prices from Canada. He convinced Tiny Paul to front him a heap of cash for it. Instead of providing the wine, he's planning to skip town with Paul's money, disappearing to St. Louis with enough dough to pay back his debts. He already faked his death once, so he'll do it again in here? Frankie asked. That's right. His plan is similar to his last one. Hire a detective claiming he's scared for his life, fake his death, then know the police won't bother with underground violence. Frankie looked at me with a blank stare. Seems like all the pieces fit, he said. So he just hired you as cover? I sighed. Seems like it. Don't worry about that, Frankie started saying, but I cut him off. I'm going to see Shipman now. I'll sweep away this mess, then come back and see you. Have a stiff drink ready, I instructed. Just be careful, Malone. Egan's Rats have a reputation. They can be ruthless. I turned and walked up the stairs. Oh boy, shit's gonna go down. There was only one place to go, the police station. Green had hired me for cover, so that he could blow town. Shipman held the final evidence to sink that plan. I needed to get to the station. Perhaps we will have one last chat with the driver. Oh, and was consumed with my own thoughts about the case. I guess we're not going to talk to the driver. I'd finally caught my break, but it was a dud. I hadn't realized it, but I'd been reveling in real detective work. Once I learned it was all bunk, my mind reverted to its incessant nagging. I wondered if I was just a puppet to some two-bit mobster. I was hardly bringing much justice to anybody, which made me unsure of what exactly it was that I was doing. I suppose I was wasting my time. Yeah, you're just kind of stopping one gangster from screwing over another gangster in the end, really, right? It all came back to the same basic premise. You're failing, my inner voice said. I began to feel nauseous in the car. My mind repeated its last thought. You are failing. Well, shit. And then everything turned black? What? What the fuck? As if someone had shut all the lights? My naked arms faded into view. They emitted a soft white glow. What the fuck is going on here? I waved them. I rubbed my eyes. I rubbed my eyes, willing them to focus, but without success. Between my fingers it appeared in the distance. I could hardly see, but the object billowed. A clarity came to me, then I understood what it was. What? Lewis's gray coat? What is going on? I floated towards it. I reached to grab the coat, which was when I saw the needles. No, not needles. Glass, shards falling all around me. Did we get in a car crash or something? One piece wedged itself deep in my right elbow. Ow. I grimaced, but I was unable to make any noise or movements. But then, as suddenly as the rain had started, it stopped. I looked upward with caution, wary of the rain's return, but above me I saw the gray coat. It was no longer billowing. It was rigid, a shield against the terrible rain. It started falling, slowly at first, but quickly it gained speed. It came upon me and enveloped me completely. It was suffocating. I couldn't breathe. I let out a gasp. And then the light... It pierced my eye sockets, hitting the back of my skull like a hammer on an anvil. I directed all my energy into my lungs and forced out a yell. That helped. Everything became quiet. I could breathe deeply. What the hell is going on? What the fuck? I noticed someone beside me. He gradually came into focus. Shipman showed his teeth in a big smile. What? Why did we have a weird vision of Lewis's coat? What the fuck was that? I looked up at him from my laying position on the Murphy bed. He swung his leg over a chair and sat beside me. Thought you'd never come around, he said. What happened? I tried to ask him something, but another bolt of pain raced up my elbow. All I managed was a groan. Relax, PCs, just a few scratches. Quite the auto crash. Yep, it was a car crash. Flew straight through the front window. Oh shit! They took out a large piece of glass from your right arm. Good thing you didn't die. I remembered a little of that, so I'll nod in agreement. I grimaced as the shake sent a sharp pain through my skull. I mumbled the words auto crash to myself. I wondered how bad the accident must have been. Shipman removed a flask from his pocket, unscrewed the top, and handed it to me. Not the best hooch, but might get rid of the banging in your head. Nah, probably not the best time to drink. I'll shake my head. Which was slowly clearing. I felt whiskey would only make it worse. My thoughts were coming back on their own. I want to give the flask back to Shipman, but he put out a hand to stop me. Hang on to it. Might change your mind after what I'm about to tell you. Uh-oh. I propped myself up on my left shoulder to listen. About Green's case, the two of us figured he was going to fake his own death. Shipman clicked his tongue to his teeth and looked towards the floor. That ain't happening. Why, is he dead? Last night, Connor Green was shot through the heart twice. Boy howdy. What? I shouted. The exclamation was impulsive. I swung my legs quickly around and sat on the edge of the bed. My headache had suddenly vanished. Whoa there, Shipman said. Look, been here with you all night, he added. Quickly, in that chair beside the bed. Just telephoned the station to check in, and that's the rap they gave me. Told them what I'd known from you, and they said they'd chase it up. Yeah, and then someone on the inside of the police station probably went and told Tiny Paul, and Tiny Paul was like, fuck that jackass, and had him killed. How do you know it was him? Another involuntary question. I was running on instinct. PC, faking your death involves a mangled body. Shot through the chest, his face is still intact. Whatever Green was planning on doing, he didn't get that far. And we looked it up. He doesn't have a twin. That would be too easy, Shipman grinned. Green hired you for this case, he continued. Gives you every right to want to follow it up if you want. That said, he was likely taking you for a ride. Wouldn't blame him if you want to drop it. But I'd like your help, PC. You know the case. Could use your head, even if it's been a little bumped. Once you're feeling better, I'll be at the station. Come find me there. Shipman stood up and cracked his back. Maybe I'll catch some shut-eye on top of my desk, too. Sure beats that chair you got. He turned and walked out. Well, fuck. And now I'm back in my apartment. Wow. Wow, that was, okay. That was, I mean, obviously the game isn't over yet, but that's, was kind of an anticlimactic, twist there. It's like, oh boy, we're about to go stop the guy, and then, yeah. Well, alright, let's take another look around the apartment. Alright, those are copies of old murder cases. Small statue. Yeah, ashtray. Kitty cat on the bed. Apartment was already cramped. The Murphy bed was up. With it down, I could barely squeeze through the living room. Newspaper was flopped on the floor. Headline about the death one, yeah. Well, I have no goals now. All of our current goals have been completed. You know, now we just fucking go to the police station and see what's up next. I mean, good heavens. It's like, where do we go now? I mean, like, where's the story going to go now? I mean, obviously now we go to the fucking... Okay, I stared at the doorway and took a deep breath. I suppose I owed Shipman enough to help solve the case, even if Green had given me the runaround. After all, what type of detective would leave a case half solved? There's only one place to go. Once again, take two, trying to get to the police station. While Green had been using me, his life had apparently been in danger all along. I resolved to find his killer. I headed to North Beach Station for any information Shipman could give me before starting the case. Go here. Maybe now we'll be able to talk with the driver. Yes, talk with the driver. You hear the latest about Shoeless Joe? He asked. Gave an interview in Milwaukee. Still says he's innocent. What a racket. Shoeless Joe Jackson was one of baseball's all-time greatest players, but in 1919 he was part of the White Sox team that had been accused of intentionally losing the World Series, fixing the match for East Coast gamblers like Arnold Rothstein. The scandal's magnitude was so enormous that every American was gripped by the reports in the newspapers, whether they were fans of baseball or not. While the team had been acquitted in a public trial, baseball insiders still claimed the fix had been real. 8 White Sox players, including Shoeless Joe, were forever banned by the league. Throughout the ordeal, Joe had maintained his innocence, and he was suing his former team for back pay that he hadn't received after being banned. Most baseball fans preferred to think of themselves as insiders, and since insiders thought Shoeless Joe was guilty, so did they. Lawsuit starts in a few days, the driver rambled on. Can't believe the guile on this one. Thinks he can ruin a sport, profit from it, then sue the league. Why I hope one of the lawyers socks him in the jaw. His rambling continued as we rolled to a stop. I hailed the taxi cab and wasn't sure if the driver had even noticed. Alright, in we go. I stepped out of the taxi cab and walked through the station doors, ready to chase any leads on Green, but standing in front of me as I entered, bawling her eyes from their sockets, was Mrs. Green. She saw me and brought her wailing closer. Poor Mrs. Green. Malone, she exhaled through her sobbing. You were working for my husband. What happened? Her breathing obscured her next sentences, but I got the general idea. I told her I knew as little about the matter as she did, but that I was looking into it, and I was sure the officers were doing their best. She begged me to help them, again drowning most of her sentences with her sobbing. I promised I would try. She took a slow inhale, raised her chest, and walked out of the station. When she was out of sight, Fred Grant came around the corner and let out a snort. Grant was another investigator for the SFPD. I studied his ruddy face, strewn with broken capillaries that gave it the impression of a map of streams. A cigar often poked through his mouth, hardening his jaw and twisting his face into a scowl. I suppose that was an appropriate look for a man who enjoyed his bribes in liquid form. Grant had never been a supporter of policewomen, and he was no fan of mine. Well, I don't really like the sound of Fred Grant too much. He lighted the cigar and said, "The widow seems pretty torn up about him. You really helping her out?" It's not your place to know, Mr. Grant. So I just stared at him. Well, alright, if you ain't gonna talk, then I should be on my way. Last thing I gotta do is head to the tin spoon, then toss this in the freezer. That meant he was about to close the case cold. He smiled, as though he was glad to do it. I raised a questioning brow. You aren't chasing it up, I asked. I suspect him. I wouldn't surprise me if he was the dirty cop who, maybe gave Tiny Paul told Tiny Paul what Green was up to. Wouldn't surprise me. He looked appalled that I would even ask. We've got more to deal with than some dead gangster. The captain don't care about crap like this, so long as it's not spreading too far. And what about the girl? What does she expect? He asked. This broad goes and marries an Irishman. Peh. Probably killed by one of his own, or some dago. All those bums run together. I gave him a frown, to which he responded, Look, if the missus wants you on this, that's her gamble, but it ain't gonna lead you nowhere, and don't expect support from the boys, not even if I find Green's killer. He laughed. If you get a confession, we'll cop him. Not something the DA can thumb his nose at either. They gotta admit 3 things. Oh boy. Means, how they killed Green. Opportunity, when they did it. And motivation, why they'd bother. Okay. So those are probably gonna be my next goals. You do that, then sure, we'll be right behind you, but there ain't nobody here looking into it, I promise. He put on a cap and walked out. Well, I hurled a glare in Grant's direction, and I was still fuming as I turned down the hallway towards Shipman's office. Shipman was frowning at the stacks of paper atop his desk, but he stood up and smiled when he saw me. Glad you made it. I vented about Grant. Now, let's forget about him. I asked him what he'd found. I asked him what he found on the case thus far. He laughed and motioned at the paper stacks. Not in any way related to Green. Piled under the trash now. Nobody's looked into Green's case here. I must have scowled a mean look at him because Shipman was quick to shake his head. Not that the case is dead, PC, but Captain has no one on it. Even Grant's coming off as soon as he can. We're underwater with other bunk. So you have nothing for me. Not true. Department still did the regular foxtrot. He tossed me a beige folder. Inside was a large black and white photograph of Green's face, muscles relaxed and eyes closed. It looked almost normal, apart from his flattened hat behind his head and the dirt and grass behind that. The report behind the picture noted 3 important clues. First, that Green died at midnight the previous night. I cursed myself that I'd been so close to stopping it. Second, that Green was killed with 2 .45 caliber bullets to the chest. Those slugs weren't from a pea shooter. Green was killed by a mean gun. Finally, that Green was found this morning laying in Washington Square Park. That was only a block away from the tin spoon. I noted each of those facts and gave the folder back to Shipman. All we got, Shipman said, laying the folder back on his desk. Can pinch the gunman if you can prove the case, but you gotta solve it without much support. Don't have time to help either, he sighed. No point coming back here until you've got your man. I never had much support, but, thanks. You don't have much support from the department anyhow. Well, Shipman sighed, at least I'm for you. But listen, we need a confession on this one. Captain doesn't want to run around. Right. Grant mentioned they'd have to admit how, why, and when they killed Green. That's it. Prove that, and we'll pick them up, he said. Never been on a murder before, right? Can get tense. Just know, if you accuse someone but can't prove everything, they'll turn like a switch. Might like you one minute, but hate you the next. Chatting with folks is your easiest route to more information, but won't get any banter after you accuse someone of murder. So be careful who you accuse. Could make your case harder if you go the wrong way. Alright, I get it, I said, and I internalized it. And remember, Shipman concluded, plenty of lies out there, but you can contradict means, motive, or opportunity with anything in your notes. I thanked him and walked out of his office. I had to try to prove means, motive, and opportunity for anyone I suspected of the murder. Once I found all 3 for a single person, I'd have them licked. I started out to begin the chase. So now wow, it's like the game has like transitioned from, one thing to... I mean, still investigating, but it's just, wow, big plot big plot shift there. Well, I think I'm gonna save beginning the investigation into who killed Green for another time, because I'm gonna execute here. But for now, thanks for watching. Until next time, rock on.